Pengembangan bisnis yang terarah. Dapatkan informasi lengkap melalui 51 tahun media Indonesia, Reka Cipta Indonesia.
Kenapa sih kita harus berinvestasi di PIK 2? Ada 3 alasan utama. Yang pertama, lokasi PIK 2. Alasan kedua, setiap orang yang membeli PIK 2 dianggap sebagai pemegang saham. Membeli produk PIK 2 memang selalu untung karena harga perdana PIK 2 50% di bawah harga market. Alasan yang ketiga, fasilitas. Di mana fasilitas yang tersedia di PIK 2 jauh lebih banyak dari real estate manapun juga.
Pesta sepak bola paling bergengsi di Eropa, Euro 2020 mulai berlangsung. Saksikan keseruan seluruh pertandingan UEFA Euro 2020 di mana saja dan kapan saja hanya di www.medcom.id/euromola. Nantikan juga kuis berhadiah voucher nonton Euro di media sosial @medcom.id. Saksikan keseruan seluruh pertandingan UEFA Euro 2020. World News, Senin hingga Jumat live jam 11:30 malam.
Hello, good evening. I'm Kania Sutisnawinata. You're watching World News on Metro Globe Network, and we are live from Jakarta. And here are tonight's top stories. Latest update from Israel. A new Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett met his cabinet on Monday as the country woke up to its first new government in 12 years. Bennett secured the backing of parliament on Sunday, ousting longtime leader Benjamin Netanyahu. Microsoft teased an array of new video games headed to its next-generation Xbox Series X console, while French developer Ubisoft previewed a new Avatar video game at the first ever all-digital E3 Games Expo. South Korean President Moon Jae-in says he's willing to provide vaccine aid to North Korea if Pyongyang agrees. Moon made the remarks during a joint news conference with Austrian President Alexander Van der Bellen following a summit meeting in Vienna on Monday. The North Korean economy has been crippled by decades of mismanagement, U.S.-led sanctions over Kim Jong-un's nuclear weapons program, and the coronavirus pandemic. South Korean officials say there are no signs North Korea is easing the border controls it imposed at the start of the pandemic or importing more industrial and agricultural materials to boost production. Kim has shown unusual candor in addressing the North's economic problems in recent political speeches, saying that the country was facing its worst ever situation due to COVID-19, sanctions, and heavy flooding last summer that decimated crops. The Copa America competition opened on Sunday in Brazil, but without the usual fan-packed stadiums and bars. The country is still grappling with the pandemic, recording some 2,000 daily deaths and high infection rates. The government is facing fierce criticism for its decision to host the games after 12 members of Venezuela's team and 2 members of Colombia's staff tested positive for the virus. Colombia and Argentina have already dropped out of the competition. Still, some fans are eager to return to normal and say vaccinated fans should be able to gather in stadiums. And the latest update from Israel, a new Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett met his cabinet on Monday as the country woke up to its first new government in 12 years. Bennett secured the backing of parliament on Sunday, ousting longtime leader Benjamin Netanyahu. Under a coalition agreement, Bennett will hold office of the premier for the first 2 years of the term, and then Foreign Minister Yair Lapid, the architect of the coalition, will become prime minister. Naftali Bennett, a former ally of Netanyahu turned rival, was sworn into office as prime minister after a 60-59 vote, and he has held first meeting on Sunday night, shortly after the new coalition government was approved by Israel's parliament. In the first meeting, Bennett promised to try to heal a divided nation. But the 71-year-old Netanyahu made clear he has no intention of exiting the political stage, calling the new coalition a dangerous government on Sunday. Netanyahu vowed to lead his Likud party back to power as the country prepared to swear in a new government.
אני עומד כאן כשליח ציבור נבחר של למעלה ממיליון ישראלים שהצביעו לליכוד בהנהגתי, ועוד כמיליון אזרחים נוספים שהצביעו למפלגות ימין בידיעה שהן תהיינה חלק מממשלה בראשותי. בזכותם ולמענם אני מתכוון להמשיך למלא את השליחות הגדולה של חיי, להבטיח את קיומה, ביטחונה ושגשוגה של מדינת ישראל.
And coming up next on World News, the iconic fedora worn by Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is up for sale. Stay tuned for more.
Kedelai hitam spesial, kecap sedap. Kental and so caramelized. Looks good, tastes good. Post, eat, repeat. Kedelai hitam spesial, kecap sedap. Beli kemasan pouch, gratis piring keramik dari Wings Food.
Kita disuspend, nggak bisa ke sana, nggak bisa, Mas. La ilaha illallah.
Tapi anehnya travel biro itu sudah langsung sampai sana juga. Gitu.
Travel biro yang bisa ke sana.
Jangan,
yang
Arab Saudi kelihatannya pelin-pelan itu, maju mundur, maju mundur.
Kita mesti paham siapa orang Arab itu. Lebih dominan kekoncoan formalnya.
Medcom.id, a part of Media Group News.
Rukan Asia Afrika PIK 2 memiliki beberapa keunggulan sebagai berikut. Yang pertama, dari segi lokasi. Berada di jalan utama PIK 2, yaitu Jalan Asia Afrika yang merupakan boulevard selebar 50 meter. Hanya sekitar 3,5 menit menuju interchange, 18 menit menuju Bandara Internasional Soekarno-Hatta, 7 menit menuju Center Point, Pantai Pasir Putih, dan CBD PIK 2. Yang kedua, merupakan konsep desain satu-satunya di Jakarta yang mengusung konsep multibisnis dengan ukuran besar, 4,5 kali 15 meter, 4 lantai, memiliki high ceiling setinggi 5,5 meter untuk lantai dasar dan 4,5 meter untuk lantai di atasnya, serta dilengkapi pedestrian walk sebesar 3 meter di depan unit. Keunggulan yang ketiga yaitu promo spesial DP 15% bisa dicicil 24 kali atau 2 tahun sebesar 32 juta rupiah per bulan. Segera hubungi PIK 2 di 021 588 8000.
Cara mudah nonton Magna Channel via set-top box. Pasang kabel antena TV ke set-top box. Tekan tombol on pada remote set-top box. Pilih menu, cari saluran, aktifkan daya antena, dan pilih pencarian otomatis. Tunggu beberapa saat, lalu pilih Magna Channel. Kini Anda bisa menikmati tayangan Magna Channel, TV digital terestrial pertama dengan jangkauan nasional.
我们为您报道最新的华语资讯，通过严格的验证和遵守卫生协议，在新的一年，我们更早地为您提供资讯。别错过每周一至周五早上7点的美读新闻。
Pandemi menguras energi. Kini saatnya bangkit lagi.
Vaksin untuk Indonesia. Setiap Jumat jam 8 malam. Metro Pagi Prime Time. Setiap hari live jam 4:30 pagi.
And welcome back. The iconic fedora worn by Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is up for sale. It is one of over 1,200 films and props from the past 60 years of film and television going on the auction block at the prop store in Santa Clarita, California. The fedora is valued at auction between $50,000 to $250,000 US dollars. Another lucky bidder will get to take home Harry Potter's glasses and wand, both worn and used by Daniel Radcliffe during production on Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. The glasses and wand have an auction estimate of $30,000 to $50,000 each, with the proceeds going to Lumos Foundation USA Inc., a charity founded by author J.K. Rowling. Other items of note, including Carrie Fisher's heavily annotated The Empire Strikes Back script, the fifth draft from Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. Bids can be placed online or by phone. The auction will be live streamed and runs 3 days starting June 29. Microsoft teased an array of new video games headed to its next generation Xbox Series X console as part of the first ever all-digital E3 Games Expo. Meanwhile, French developer Ubisoft previewed a new Avatar video game at the first ever all-digital E3 Games Expo.
Our future, it's an epic about hope.
Microsoft wowed gamers with a look at upcoming next-generation role-playing game Starfield as part of its online showcase on Sunday, June 13.
The technology and
Microsoft acquired ZeniMax Media, parent company of Bethesda Softworks, for $7.5 billion last September. As a result, Starfield is headed exclusively to Xbox in November 2022. Xbox used its 90-minute online showcase to preview some 30 upcoming video games, 27 of which headed to its Game Pass subscription service. The much-anticipated Halo Infinite, the latest in the popular sci-fi shooter series, will be released this Christmas. Originally intended to be a launch title for the new Xbox Series X console in August last year, developers 343 Industries delayed the game till 2021. Meanwhile, Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora takes gamers into the sci-fi world of James Cameron's Avatar. Without giving a release date, Ubisoft said the upcoming title is a new standalone story. Gamers play as a Na'vi and embark on a journey across the western frontier, a never-before-seen part of Pandora. Cameron's original Avatar came out in 2009. The long-delayed Avatar 2 sequel is now expected in December 2022. During the French company's Ubisoft Forward presentation on Saturday, June 12, gamers also got a glimpse of upcoming Mario game, Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope. Destined for the Nintendo Switch console in 2022, the game sees Mario, Rabbid, Peach, and friends back for a new adventure of cosmic scale. Gamers were also given a taster of upcoming Far Cry 6, due out on October 7.
They could be good workers. They could help rebuild paradise.
Starring Giancarlo Esposito of The Mandalorian and Breaking Bad fame, it follows a modern-day guerrilla revolution set in the fictional country of Yara in the heart of the Caribbean.
And Diego has such compassion for his people.
Just like video gaming itself in recent years, LA's Electronic Entertainment Expo, or E3, headed online last week as a result of the pandemic. The first ever all-digital E3 began on Saturday, June 12, and runs till Tuesday, June 15.
As well as stepping back into the character of Peter Rabbit in the latest installment of the Fairy franchise, James Corden also recently hosted the most hotly anticipated TV event of the year.
The sitcom gathered for the second time since the show ended in 2004 to reminisce about the series. Corden said he was honored and overwhelmed to have been given hosting duties. The 42-year-old English actor and television host also shared his excitement about the upcoming European Football Championships, which was postponed in 2020 due to the pandemic. He seemed slightly optimistic about the England team's chances, while acknowledging the unpredictable nature of the game. How British of him.
Get back here! Spread out.
Meanwhile, Peter Rabbit 2: The Runaway is released in cinemas in the US from 11th of June 2021.
Join them, frolic.
Yeah, I can frolic. This is fun. I'm speeding up a little. I'm speeding up quite a bit.
And that's why adults shouldn't do kid stuff.
Diners at an Egyptian restaurant fasten their seatbelts and get ready for the ride. The food at eatery comes with a pretend travel experience on the side. It takes a little imagination to get the full experience that offers diners a faux travel experience. The staff at the restaurant in Alexandria are dressed as flight attendants, and the chairs look just like airplane seats. The fast food restaurant caters to people who long to travel the way they used to before the coronavirus pandemic's limits on travel. Customers must first choose whether they want window or aisle seats on the pretend plan. The restaurant actually launched about 2 years ago before the pandemic began. The concept was developed by an engineer who started the restaurant's brand. It kicked off in the city of Mansoura before branches rolled out in several other Egyptian cities. And we'll be back with more news right after the break.
Kedelai hitam spesial, kecap sedap. Kental and so caramelized. Looks good, tastes good. Post, eat, repeat. Kedelai hitam spesial, kecap sedap. Beli kemasan pouch, gratis piring keramik dari Wings Food.
Setiap saat, berita bertabur di ruang publik. Namun hanya Media Indonesia memberikan yang terbaik, mendalam, terpercaya, dan mudah diakses di mana saja dan kapan saja. Media Indonesia Cetak, mediaindonesia.com, dan e-paper Media Indonesia layak menjadi referensi Anda. Media Indonesia, referensi bangsa. Pesta sepak bola paling bergengsi di Eropa, Euro 2020 mulai berlangsung. Saksikan keseruan seluruh pertandingan UEFA Euro 2020 di mana saja dan kapan saja hanya di www.medcom.id/Euromola. Nantikan juga kuis berhadiah voucher nonton Euro di media sosial @medcom.id. Saksikan keseruan seluruh pertandingan UEFA Euro 2020.
Miliki gudang multiguna at Peak 2 Bispark. Hadir dengan layout yang fungsional. Bisa difungsikan sebagai gudang, kantor, dan rumah sekaligus. Hanya 3,5 menit menuju interchange. Hanya 18 menit menuju Bandara Internasional Soekarno-Hatta. Miliki gudang multiguna ukuran 6x20 meter. Dengan harga spesial 2,5 miliar rupiah. Kunjungi show unit kami. Hubungi 021 588 8000.
Baru dari Metro TV mulai bulan Juni, The Legends, setiap Sabtu jam 7:30 malam.
Nggak benar ini kalau seperti ini. Karena Cut Nyadi bukan saya.
Saya ingat mama, sampai mama nangis sampai air matanya keluar.
Untuk Indonesia dalam Newsline, setiap Jumat jam 2:30 sore. The Journalist, setiap Senin jam 8 malam. Kick Andy Double Check. Metro TV, knowledge to elevate.
Saat ini obat ampuh untuk melawan virus corona belum ada.
Saya ingin agar protokol kesehatan, perubahan perilaku di masyarakat menjadi perhatian kita. Kita fokus kampanye pakai masker.
Semua wajib pakai masker di Media Group. Disiplin memakai masker tidak hanya untuk melindungi diri dan sesama, tapi juga untuk menjaga Indonesia kita.
Metro Singwan, tayang setiap Senin sampai Jumat jam 7 pagi.
In our entertainment news tonight, Ned Beatty dies at 83 while Corden reprises his role as Peter Rabbit. We have Heights edged by Quiet Place in box office, and Boy George turns 60. And that's it for World News Tonight. I'm Kania Sutisnawinata. Thanks again for watching. Good night.
Ned Beatty, the character actor whose first film role in 1972's Deliverance launched him on a long, prolific, and accomplished career, has died. He was 83. Beatty's manager, Deborah Miller, said Beatty died Sunday, June 13, 2021, of natural causes at his home in Los Angeles, surrounded by friends and loved ones. After years in regional theater, Beatty was cast in Deliverance as Bobby Tripp, the happy-go-lucky member of a male riverboating party terrorized by backwoods thugs. The scene in which Tripp is brutalized became the most memorable in the movie and established Beatty as an actor. Beatty received an Oscar nomination as supporting actor for his role as corporate executive Arthur Jensen in 1976 Network. His credits including more than 150 movies and TV shows. He was equally memorable as Otis, the idiot henchman of villainous Lex Luthor in the first two Christopher Reeve Superman movies, and as the racist sheriff in White Lightning. Other films included All the President's Men and The Big Easy.
We are gathered here today to join Bea and Thomas in holy matrimony.
James Corden is back, voicing beloved British rabbit Peter. The previous Peter Rabbit was one of 2018's top animated releases, grossing $351 million worldwide, including a hefty $236 million internationally. The release sequel, Peter Rabbit 2: The Runaway, was delayed due to the pandemic.
Dad, it's Peter Rabbit.
I hate that I'm the
Fresh from hosting the Friends reunion episode, Corden mused on how liberating he finds voicing characters. In the latest adventure, Bea, played by Rose Byrne, Thomas, played by Domhnall Gleeson, Peter Rabbit, and his siblings have formed a makeshift family after Bea and Thomas marry. Yet, Peter can't seem to shed his naughty reputation.
Without them.
David Oyelowo joins the cast as Nigel Basil Jones, who doesn't have the rabbit's best interests at heart. The actor said he was convinced, or pressured even, to take the role by daughter Zoe. Peter Rabbit 2: The Runaway has been released in cinemas in the U.S. from 11th June 2021.
Join them, frolic.
Yeah, I can frolic. This is fun. I'm speeding up a little. I'm speeding up quite a bit.
And that's why adults...
Lisa Barrera, Corey Hawkins, and Leslie Grace in The Heights came in second at the North American box office to A Quiet Place 2, which has passed the $100 million mark. A Quiet Place 2, directed by John Krasinski, is the first movie during the pandemic to earn $100 million at the box office.
This so well.
Peter Rabbit 2: The Runaway, with James Corden in the voice of Peter, came in third.
Parent.
Not that close.
A father.
Father? Father? No.
It's a witch.
Last week's #1 film, The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It, landed in 4th place.
Connection still broken. And so...
And Disney's Cruella, an origin story of 101 Dalmatians baddie, Cruella de Vil, starring Emma Stone, rounds out the top 5.
It really, really does. Remind you all that I'm doing this in heels.
Boy George celebrates his 60th birthday Monday, June 14, and is just as busy with his career now as he was when it began in the 1980s. George told reporters at the Brit Awards in May that he was 60 and defiant. He plans to put out 60 records for his 60th birthday. Ooh. And casting is underway for an actor to play him in a forthcoming biopic, Karma Chameleon. How appropriate. George was born George Elan O'Dowd in 1961 in Kent, southeast England, and brought up in South London. Influenced by glam rockers like David Bowie, George became involved in the new romantic scene in London. After a short stint performing with post-punk band Bow Wow Wow, he formed a band called Sex Gang Children with Mikey Craig, John Moss, and Roy Hay. They later changed the name to Culture Club. The band's debut album, Kissing to Be Clever, was an international hit in 1982, helped by the big-selling single, Do You Really Wanna Hurt Me? Their second album, Color by Numbers, was also a global smash. Their third and fourth long players did not perform as well, and the group disbanded in 1986. Culture Club reunited in 1998, 2006, 2011, and 2014, recording new material and touring. Meanwhile, George pursued a solo career, writing, performing, and playing DJ sets. You may recall he came to Indonesia as a DJ. Boy George has also made many appearances on screen with a cameo in The A-Team, and he was also a judge on TV talent show The Voice in the UK. George has been able to continue to work during lockdown, making music with his producer in a COVID-safe bubble and creating art. SMI.
Excuse me.
Metro TV. Media Indonesia lebih dari sekadar surat kabar, hadir melalui beragam platform, cetak, e-paper, dan online. Dengan program di media sosial yang kuat dalam konten, dan pengembangan bisnis yang terarah. Dapatkan informasi lengkap melalui 51 tahun Media Indonesia, Reka Cipta Indonesia.
Kesehatan itu adalah hal penting yang harus kita jaga loh. Saat ini, teknologi pun ikut mendukung kesehatan. Supaya semakin sehat dan bugar.
Bersama para pakar kesehatan, kami mengulas kesehatan yang berbalut teknologi.
Simak Go Healthy
di Metro TV.
Pesta sepak bola paling bergengsi di Eropa, Euro 2020 mulai berlangsung. Saksikan keseruan seluruh pertandingan UEFA Euro 2020. Di mana saja dan kapan saja, hanya di www.medcom.id/Euromola. Nantikan juga kuis berhadiah voucher nonton Euro di media sosial @medcom.id. Saksikan keseruan seluruh pertandingan UEFA Euro 2020.
Kenapa sih kita harus berinvestasi di PIK 2? Ada 3 alasan utama. Yang pertama, lokasi PIK 2. Alasan kedua, setiap orang yang membeli PIK 2 dianggap sebagai pemegang saham. Membeli produk PIK 2 memang selalu untung karena harga perdana PIK 2 50% di bawah harga market. Alasan yang ketiga, fasilitas. Di mana fasilitas yang tersedia di PIK 2 jauh lebih banyak dari real estate manapun juga.
Metro Eye Care, setiap minggu jam 10 pagi. Metro TV hadir di mana peristiwa terjadi. Bekerja dengan identitas yang jelas. Dan mampu beradaptasi dengan teknologi terbaru. Agar Anda bisa mendapatkan informasi dengan segera. Jurnalis Metro TV berintegritas dan tidak menerima imbalan dalam bentuk apapun. Metro TV, knowledge to elevate. Nikmati Metro TV HD di saluran digital Anda.
Ayo semuanya, dukung migrasi TV digital. Bersih gambarnya, jernih suaranya, dan canggih teknologinya.
Metro TV, a part of Media Group News.
Indonesia tanah air beta, pusaka abadi nan jaya. Indonesia sejak dulu kala tetap dipuja-puja bangsa.
Indonesia tanah air beta, pusaka abadi nan jaya. Indonesia
sana tempat lahir beta, dibuai dibesarkan bunda, tempat berlindung di hari tua sampai akhir menutup mata, tempat berlindung di hari tua sampai akhir menutup mata.
Metro TV, a part of Media Group News.
Inilah headline news pukul 00 waktu Indonesia Barat. Pemirsa, KPK akhirnya resmi menahan Direktur PT Andonara Propetindo, Tommy Andrian, tersangka kasus dugaan korupsi pengadaan tanah di Muncul Cipayung, Jakarta Timur oleh Pemprov DKI Jakarta tahun 2019. KPK juga menetapkan satu tersangka baru, yakni Rudi Hartono, Direktur PT Aldira Berkah Abadi Makmur. Dalam keterangan persnya, Wakil Ketua KPK Lili Pintauli menyampaikan penyidik KPK telah melakukan penahanan terhadap Direktur PT Andonara Propetindo, Tommy Andrian selama 20 hari ke depan di rutan KPK Gedung Merah Putih, Jakarta sebagai tersangka kasus dugaan korupsi pengadaan tanah di Muncul Cipayung, Jakarta Timur oleh Pemprov DKI Jakarta 2019 lalu. KPK juga menetapkan satu tersangka baru, yakni Rudi Hartono Iskandar selaku Direktur PT Aldira Berkah Abadi Makmur atau PT ABAM. Lebih jauh, Lili Pintauli menjelaskan penetapan Rudi Hartono sebagai tersangka setelah diterbitkannya sprindik pada 28 Mei 2021. Rudi Hartono sendiri mengkonfirmasi tidak bisa hadir pada pemanggilan dan pemeriksaan Senin 14 Juni 2021 dengan alasan sakit sehingga meminta penjadwalan ulang. Dengan penetapan Rudi Hartono, Direktur PT ABAM ini menambah total tersangka dalam kasus dugaan korupsi pengadaan tanah di Muncul Cipayung ini menjadi 5 tersangka.
Tidak hanya kemudian melakukan penahanan.
Kejaksaan Tinggi Sulawesi Tenggara menggeledah sejumlah ruangan di Dinas Energi dan Sumber Daya Mineral Sulawesi Tenggara untuk mencari bukti dugaan korupsi tambang yang merugikan negara 190 miliar rupiah. Penggeledahan berhasil membawa sejumlah dokumen di ruangan bidang minerba di kantor Dinas SDM Provinsi Sulawesi Tenggara yang diduga memiliki keterkaitan dengan barang bukti dugaan korupsi tambang yang dilakukan PT Toshida. Pada tahun 2010, PT Toshida telah mendapat izin pertambangan, namun dari tahun 2010 hingga 2020, PT Toshida tidak pernah membayar kewajibannya. Pada tahun Desember 2020, izin kawasan PT Toshida telah dicabut, namun masih terus melakukan pertambangan hingga kerugian negara mencapai 190 miliar rupiah. Sebelumnya, Kejaksaan Tinggi Sultra telah memeriksa Kepala Bidang Minerba Yusmin sebagai saksi. Demikian headline news saat ini pemirsa, kami akan kembali untuk Anda 1 jam mendatang. Sampai jumpa.
Menuju rehat malam bersama program-program berita Metro TV. Rangkuman berita pilihan hari ini di dalam negeri dan mancanegara.
Saya Iqbal Himawan akan menemani Anda dalam program Top News.
Laporan perkembangan terkini serta dari dunia olahraga.
Jumpa lagi di Metro Sport.
Selamat malam pemirsa Metro Malam kembali hadir menjumpai.
Kami dampingi Anda menutup hari, memastikan malam Anda terisi dengan informasi yang baik dan terkonfirmasi. Metro TV, knowledge to elevate.
Pandemi bikin kita susah.
Semua mencoba bertahan hidup dengan hati yang gelisah.
Kita sampai di hari ini karena kita saling melindungi.
Ada yang berjuang paling depan.
Ada yang setia melindungi.
Harapan-harapan itu sekarang nyata.
Vaksin untuk Indonesia bersama SLANG.
Setiap Jumat jam 8 malam.
Hello and happy Monday and welcome to Asia Prime on Metro Globe Network, coming to you live from Jakarta, Indonesia. I'm Ralph Tambubolon.
And I'm 50 Aleida Yahya. In the next 2 hours, we have prime stories from all over the world.
And here are tonight's top stories.
U.S. President Joe Biden in G7 summit said the U.S. was in a contest with autocracies and that group of 7 leaders had agreed to collectively call out China's alleged human rights abuses.
The Indonesian Ministry of Tourism is having a special event called The Sound of Borobudur. We will chat about this tonight.
A heated gun battle between militants and Indian police broke out in the disputed region of Kashmir, India. We highlight the G7 summit tonight. It starts with U.S. President Joe Biden in G7 summit said the U.S. was in a contest with autocracies and that group of 7 leaders had agreed to collectively call out China's alleged human rights abuses.
In a news conference following the G7 summit in southwestern England, Biden also commented on his upcoming meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Biden says while he believes the U.S. can work with Russia, quote, there's no guarantee you can change someone's behavior, unquote. Biden was also asked by a reporter why he had kept in place Trump-era steel and aluminum sanctions, to which he replied, quote, give me a break, I need time, end quote. Here is Biden's full statement.
120 days, give me a break. Need time. G7 explicitly agreed to call out human rights abuses in Xinjiang and in Hong Kong, explicitly. 2, to coordinate a common strategy to deal with China non-market policies that undermine competition. They've agreed, and that's underway now, how to do that. 3, to take serious actions against forced labor in solar, agriculture, and the garment industries, because that's where it's happening. And they've agreed we will do that. To launch what I said earlier, I really feel very strongly. I propose that we have a democratic alternative to the Belt and Road Initiative, to Build Back Better. And they've agreed to that, and that's underway. As the details of that, we agreed that we put together a committee to do that and come up with that. And thirdly, that we are going to insist on high standards for a climate-friendly, transparent alternative to the Belt and Road Initiative. But in the meantime, we're going to move forward.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced his country would be contributing 100 million vaccine doses to poorer countries to help end the coronavirus pandemic.
Trudeau says Canada was one of only 4 countries to have fully met its obligations to the so-called ACT mechanism for distributing vaccines globally. Canada's share is 100 million doses, a target signaled by the Liberal government at the onset of the 3-day summit. Much of the goal, 87 million doses, has already been paid for through the ACT Accelerator, the global collaborative effort to develop and share COVID-19 vaccines. Canada will donate an additional 13 million doses out of its planned surplus supply. Trudeau also made clear that G7 members would continue to contest China in certain areas such as human rights.
Many of those doses flow through the ACT Accelerator investment that we made in the beginning, and I'll point out that Canada and Germany are 2 of the only 4 countries to have met and even exceeded our commitments to the ACT Accelerator, as well as a number of doses that we have purchased in Canada that we are directing through COVAX to be distributed around the world. But it's important to remember that just giving vaccines to the world on their own isn't quite enough. We need medical systems, we need refrigeration systems, we need abilities to get those into arms around the world. And that's the role that the ACT Accelerator plays, and where Canada has seen importance not just in donating doses, but in also supporting the health systems.
Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron on Sunday welcomed the return of the United States to the world stage after U.S. President Joe Biden attended his first G7 summit, and Macron was addressing a news conference, and his remarks were in part a dig at the distance former U.S. President Donald Trump created with transatlantic partners.
Macron also insisted that the G7 was not hostile to China.
Le G7 n'est pas un club hostile à la Chine. C'est un ensemble de démocraties qui entend travailler avec la Chine sur tous les sujets mondiaux sur lesquels la Chine est prête à travailler avec nous, qu'il s'agisse du climat, qu'il s'agisse justement d'un vrai réengagement dans les règles du commerce mondial, qu'il s'agisse des politiques de développement et de la gestion des dettes africaines, etc., etc. C'est un compétiteur économique duquel nous attendons le respect plein et entier de toutes les règles auxquelles nous nous sommes collectivement et volontairement soumis, celles de l'Organisation mondiale du commerce. Et c'est aussi une puissance avec laquelle nous avons des désaccords que nous assumons quand il s'agit du travail forcé ou des droits de l'homme.
China and Russia named as sources of global security and economic threats.
White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara files this report from Brussels.
An air show by the British Red Arrows and a reception with Queen Elizabeth. G7 summit host British Prime Minister Boris Johnson pulled out all the stops to facilitate this meeting with leaders of the world's 7 wealthiest democracies, their first in person since 2019.
There has been a fantastic degree of harmony.
Despite the appearance of normality, the coronavirus pandemic overshadowed the summit, which ended with a pledge to end the outbreak and work to prevent similar ones in the future.
Leaders have pledged over 1 billion doses, either directly or through funding to COVAX.
Activists say it's not enough. They demand that rich countries, which are accused of hoarding vaccines, do more, including waiving intellectual property rights for vaccines at the World Trade Organization. U.S. President Joe Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron support the waiver, but the rest of the G7 opposes it.
We know that donations are not going to get us out of this crisis. What we needed to see was the G7 leaders coming together and to commit to lift the patents on these vaccines and share the recipes so that developing countries can make these vaccines for themselves.
China, which is not a G7 member, was a focus of the talks. President Biden pushed leaders to call out Beijing's forced labor practices and unwillingness to play by international trade rules. The group announced a U.S.-sponsored infrastructure financing mechanism for low- and middle-income countries called Build Back Better World to rival China's Belt and Road Initiative, the global infrastructure strategy central to Beijing's foreign policy.
We think that there's a much more equitable way to provide for the needs of countries around the world. And so it's a values-driven, high-standard, transparent financing mechanism we're going to provide.
China hit back by saying that the days when global decisions were dictated by a small group of countries are long gone. Russia, kicked out of the G8 in 2014 following Moscow's annexation of Crimea, was also called out for its destabilizing behavior, including cyber attacks and chemical weapons use against individuals opposed to Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Autocrats have enormous power. They don't have to answer to a public.
On climate change, leaders committed to meet an overdue spending pledge of $100 billion a year to help developing countries cope with global warming. Despite activist pressure, only 2 nations, Canada and Germany, gave specific cash amounts.
They are basically painting a story like they're doing what needs to be done for the climate and ecological emergency. But we know that they're not.
After an audience with the Queen Sunday evening, Biden flew to Brussels to attend summits with NATO and the European Union. From Brussels, Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
Nervous laughter ensued ahead of G7 talks when U.S. President Joe Biden inquired whether UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson had introduced South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to the rest of the table.
Johnson, who is chairing the discussions taking place in Cornwall over the weekend, spent the afternoon speaking to his international counterparts, including some newcomers to the debates. Amongst them were Ramaphosa, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, and South Korean President Moon Jae-in. Biden seemed unsure as to whether Johnson had introduced the South African leader, to which a flustered Johnson replied, quote, I did, I certainly did, end quote. And that incident was laughed off by those around the round table, included German Chancellor Angela Merkel, French President Emmanuel Macron, and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
And joining us from Brussels, Belgium, Patsy Widakuswara. She is the senior White House correspondent and traveling with President Biden. Hello, Patsy. These types of international summit feel so far removed from the lives of ordinary people. Please tell us, what are the decisions actually made during the G7 summit that can have impact on ordinary Indonesian people and others around the world?
Well, you're absolutely right, Fifi. I mean, these international summits are often called a diplomat's tea party, as you know. And we really have to ask, what are the commitments made by the G7 leaders that will actually translate to real life differences in people's life. But as you know, this is a grouping of 7 of the wealthiest democracies. So a lot of their decisions will impact the rest of the world economically as well as politically. Now, 2 of the things that I can underline from this summit is the first one is their commitment to end the pandemic and prevent a future one. You've seen in my report that the leaders have agreed to donate 1 billion doses. That's whether in the form of actual vaccine doses or in terms of contribution to COVAX. This is the UN mechanism of vaccine sharing to ensure that low and medium income countries, including Indonesia, have access to vaccines. And 500 million of those vaccine doses will be contributed by the United States, again, via the COVAX scheme. 92 countries, including Indonesia, will be part of it. So we don't know how many actual doses will translate to doses given to Indonesia. That's still being determined. But that's definitely one thing to be underlined. And the second one is climate change. I mean, these are the leaders of the wealthiest nations. They're industrialized. A lot of their actions will determine how much greenhouse gases gets emitted to the atmosphere, as well as what kind of commitments they and their private sector will do to reduce the increase of Earth's temperature to under 1.5 degrees Celsius as they head to the next big summit on climate change, which is at COP26 in a few months in Glasgow. So those are the 2 things, climate change and also COVID, that I would say would make a difference if the countries actually do what they pledged to do at the G7 summit.
Now, Patsy, many activists are saying that the 1 billion doses of vaccine donation from G7 countries is not enough. They should instead waive trademark restrictions so that developing countries can produce their own. So tell us more, why doesn't the G7 support the idea of developing countries produce their own vaccines?
You're absolutely right, Ralph. I mean, the UN has said that we need at least 11 billion doses of vaccines to reach herd immunity to get the world out of this pandemic. So 1 billion doses is, it's a start, but it's definitely nowhere enough to get us out of it. And there is a lot of pressure for these wealthy countries to do more, certainly. And the thing about waiving vaccine patent is this all comes down to this proposal originally submitted by South Africa as well as India at the World Trade Center, where they're saying, look, we don't need vaccine donations. Countries like South Africa and India and many other middle-income countries, including Indonesia, we can actually make our own vaccines. We don't want to be begging for doses. Just give us the recipe and tell us that if we produce these vaccines, your pharmaceutical companies won't be suing us for intellectual property infringement. So this is the kind of debate that's going on at the G7. And there are 2 camps, as I noted in my report. There's the there's the US under President Biden, as well as France under President Macron, who agreed to support this TRIPS waiver, that is the proposal at the WTO to waive patents on vaccine technology, and the rest of the G7 who says, no, we don't want to do that. What we want to do is voluntary licensing. This is the kind of licensing, for example, between Sinovac and Biopharma in Indonesia that enables companies in different countries to produce it. However, it's still very much determined by the original maker of the vaccine. what is the timeline, how much to produce and how much to sell, what the pricing to sell. So it's definitely not, it's more restrictive than waiving patents on the vaccines. So far, the G7 has said that's the way we want to do it. We're not going to give away our vaccine recipes. I think this debate will continue to, develop at the World Trade Center, and the U.S. has promised that it will not change its position in terms of actually supporting the vaccine patent waiver.
All right, then. Well, I'd like to move on to China. Tell us more about this focus on China. What was the message that the G7 leaders are trying to convey to Xi Jinping? And is there a unified response from the G7 leaders, Patsy?
Yeah, so the message that the G7 leaders are trying to convey to President Xi Jinping is, number one, we know that you're rising, and we know that you are playing in some ways not according to international rules when it comes to trade. And we also are watching you in terms of human rights abuses. The thing that they're really underlying right now is the use of forced labor. This is the accusation that Beijing is doing this mass transfer of millions of Uyghur ethnic minorities, Muslim ethnic minorities, as well as other ethnic minorities from the region of Xinjiang to factories all over China, producing global brands, technology, consumer goods, all sorts of things. And this is the reason why China can compete so well around the world, is because they're using this type of forced labor, obviously pressing down on their costs. And so this is something that the President Biden and G7 leaders want to highlight, not just in terms of the humanitarian aspect of it, but also on the trade impact of it. So that's number one. Number two, the leaders of the G7 are saying to China that, look, we know that you are offering all these hundreds of billions of loans, in some ways with very questionable requirements to countries around Africa, Southeast Asia, as well as Latin America, even in Europe, in the form of the Belt and Road Initiative loans. What the G7 leaders, with the push from President Joe Biden, is saying that this is what we can offer as an alternative, this new initiative called Build Back Better World. What is still unclear, Fifi, is just how much new funding is actually allocated by the leaders. Is this just a repackaging of, already existing loans from IMF and the World Bank and Exim Bank and so on? What is the timeline? What is the scope? That much is still really unclear.
All right. So, Patsy, you're now in Brussels covering President Biden, who is there for the NATO and EU summit. So tell us what's on the agenda. What can we expect looking ahead this week?
Yep, I am in the very exciting environment of the Press Filing Center here at the hotel in Brussels. Right after this, I'm going to wrap up and go to the NATO headquarters, where President Biden will be meeting with President Erdogan of Turkey in a couple of hours. He just recently met with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, and I think he's meeting with some Balkan leaders right now as we speak. Later on, there will be a press conference where Joe Biden will again underline the message that America is back. Obviously, this is a not subtle jab against his predecessor, President Trump, who was very much viewing alliances in Europe with a lot of disdain. You remember that President Trump said that NATO was obsolete at one point. So this is definitely a change of tone that President Biden will be bringing in Europe. Tomorrow, we'll be heading to Geneva. On Wednesday, actually, we'll be heading to Geneva after today's NATO summit, and tomorrow a summit with the EU. On Wednesday, we'll be heading to Geneva, where there'll be this long-awaited summit between President Biden and President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. A lot of issues will be discussed, including what the Russian interference or Russian meddling on U.S. elections, as well as democratic elections around the world, as well as issues of cybersecurity and ransomware, but also areas of cooperation, including reduction of nuclear arms and climate change. So a big, busy week for Joe Biden, and I'll be followed, and I'm happy to report back to you guys whenever you need.
Very well then. Patsy Widakuswara, Senior White House Correspondent, thank you for joining us. You stay safe. Take care.
And stay healthy as well. Well, coming up, one of the 8 wonders of the world, the Borobudur Temple in Magelang, Central Java, is hosting a special event called The Sound of Borobudur Music Over Nations. Details coming up. You're watching Asia Prime on Metro Globe Network.
Kesehatan yang sudah tidak optimal tentu akan berakibat pada kualitas hidup Anda. Ilmu pengetahuan yang semakin berkembang dan teknologi yang semakin maju membawa sejumlah inovasi di bidang medis.
Setelah diperiksa lab, gulanya tinggi. Curiga, hati-hati. Ini adalah salah satu tanda masalah pada jantung.
Jangan anggap enteng yang namanya stroke. Halo pemirsa, apa kabar? Senang sekali saya Tantri Murdopo dan juga Pak Ronald bisa kembali menjumpai Anda di Go Healthy. Cara tepat, hidup sehat.
Pesta sepak bola paling bergengsi di Eropa, Euro 2020 mulai berlangsung. Saksikan keseruan seluruh pertandingan UEFA Euro 2020 di mana saja dan kapan saja hanya di www.medcom.id/Euromola. Nantikan juga kuis berhadiah voucher nonton Euro di media sosial @medcom.id. Saksikan keseruan seluruh pertandingan UEFA Euro 2020.
Miliki gudang multiguna at Peak 2 Bispark. Hadir dengan layout yang fungsional. Bisa difungsikan sebagai gudang, kantor, dan rumah sekaligus. Hanya 3,5 menit menuju interchange. Hanya 18 menit menuju Bandara Internasional Soekarno-Hatta. Miliki gudang multiguna ukuran 6x20 meter. Dengan harga spesial 2,5 miliar rupiah. Kunjungi show unit kami. Hubungi 021 588 8000.
Nikmati Metro TV HD di saluran digital Anda.
Ayo semuanya, dukung migrasi TV digital. Bersih gambarnya, jernih suaranya, dan canggih teknologinya.
Bumi Papua yang memberikan energi kepada saudara-saudaranya dari seluruh persada tanah air. Saya katakan ini karena inilah merupakan suatu kenyataan yang sesungguhnya. Matahari terbit dari ufuk, dan timur itu adalah tiada artinya semuanya tanpa Papua.
KSP Muldoko telah keluar dari akal sehat.
Kelompok yang menyerang anggota ini diidentifikasi sebagai Laskar Khusus.
Banyak informasi simpang siur di sekitar kita.
Ada pihak-pihak yang telah mengambil suatu sikap dan telah membocorkan informasi.
Mana fakta sebenarnya?
Orang itulah terorisnya, bukan Papua terorisnya.
Saya nggak mau bunuh dia, di luar dugaan, parah pas kena leher.
Saya akan konfirmasi di Kick Andy Double Check.
Disiplin pakai masker. Hindari risiko sangat tinggi penularan COVID-19 saat tidak memakai masker. Risiko penularan tinggi saat orang sakit tanpa masker berinteraksi dengan orang sehat dengan masker. Risiko penularan sedang jika orang sakit yang memakai masker berinteraksi dengan orang sehat tanpa masker. Dan risiko rendah saat keduanya memakai masker. Memakai masker dapat menurunkan risiko terinfeksi virus corona. Ayo pakai masker sekarang.
One thing that you always need to remind yourself during this pandemic is keeping your distance from others or keeping physical distances. So, solo traveling now getting more popular since people are desperate to have a holiday but still can maintain the physical distancing protocols. We have this new cool spot in Yogyakarta that fits solo travelers. They call it Teletubbies Hills. Yes, Teletubbies. Because the hill's contours look like a very unique Teletubbies house. Sometimes people also call it New Zealand in Yogyakarta. Teletubbies Hills located in Bagus Mountain area in Palian Gunung Kidul, Yogyakarta. It takes 15 minutes drive from Wonosari or about an hour from Yogyakarta City. Breathtaking scenery welcomes you along the way. Once as you arrive, you can see beautiful karst hills and cornfields. No wonder visitors taking many photos or selfies on this location. Since it's getting more popular, people choose to come here to catch the sunset, enjoy scenery and cool air, and here come the best part. Everything's free, no charge at all. Erwin Hidayat for Metro Globe Network.
Yogyakarta classic, lots of history, lots of scenic beauties. And speaking of Yogyakarta, there is also a very famous and beautiful tourism spot. This is not far from Yogyakarta. This one is located in Magelang, Central Java. It is one of the 8 wonders of the world, the Borobudur Temple. Fifi, when did you visit there last time?
Over 5 years, but planning to visit in July during the summer holidays.
Excellent.
Well, if you can call it a summer holiday. Well, the Indonesian Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economics is having this special event called Sound of Borobudur, Music Over Nations, during an international conference to promote 5 super priority tourist destinations. The music conference is initiated by Indonesian musicians based on consideration that music is a universal language, while hoping that more people are getting connected with Borobudur and its culture.
Joining us live tonight is the initiator of the event, Sound of Borobudur, Music Over Nations, Indonesian well-known singer Tri Utami. Tri, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Can you tell us more about the event?
Okay, the event will be held at June 24 at Balkondes Karangrejo, at Karangrejo village at Borobudur district. And the theme of the conference will be Music Over Nations, Sound of Borobudur, Music Over Nations. This will be very various artists and musicians from Southeast Asia and all around the world will be joining us and playing together at this program.
Mbak Ii, what is the message during this conference that will be conveyed to the public? What do you want to focus on?
Okay, the title Music Over Nation is already proven at the relief of Borobudur. We found more or less about 200 something musical instruments coming from that age. And then it's proven that our ancestors may be playing together. And then from the musical instruments that sculptured at the relief of Borobudur, we found that we still find the instruments all around Indonesia until now, and at least 40 countries all around the world. So that is proven that maybe, we don't know, Borobudur is a melting pot, or people from Borobudur traveling around the world to send the musical message. We don't know. But the Borobudur now is calling. Then Music Over Nations is proven that through music, we can reconnect our brotherhood, interhuman beings.
All right, so as much as we appreciate this event happening, we still have to be aware that this is happening still in the ongoing pandemic. So what precautions are you taking, and how can you ensure about the safety of this event?
Yes, because the conference will be hybridly, and then we invite very limited person at the site, at the venue, and then we invite everybody coming from the world can join the conference online.
So how can we join? Where do we find more information about joining the international conference, Mbak Ii?
Okay, you can find on our website at soundofborobudur.org, and you can find a form, and then you can register by online.
All right then. So, can you recommend the highlights? I mean, the must-see session, which will be the most highlighted event during the international conference?
Okay, the Indonesian musician that joined the Sound of Borobudur made 3 videos, musical videos that we sent to the several musicians in Southeast Asia's country, and then to the world also, to the Italy and Japan and United States of America, to United Kingdom, and then they can respond it and to record the audio and video and send back to us. Then we can mix it down, and then we can put the video together, and then we can play together at the pandemic.
Okay, then.
And also, you're the initiator, but how much of can we expect of a performance coming from the one and only Trie Utami in this event?
I hope everybody can join. I don't know. I don't have any limit for the musicians. Everybody can join. Everybody can attend the conference, and then we can do the good things for the nations, for our nation, and then we can carry the work through music.
Mbak Ii, Trie Utami, all the best for the International Conference Sound of Borobudur. Looking forward for all the updates. Have fun.
Trie Utami joining us here on Asia Prime. Now moving on to a group of housewives in the Bokela village. This one is in Nagekeo Regency, East Nusa Tenggara. They're learning on how to dye a piece of woven textile using natural color ingredients coming from available materials that they can access from their households or surrounding environments.
This is an environmental friendly approach, and it also can improve their household income.
In Bokela village, Nagekeo Regency, East Nusa Tenggara, a group of housewives have been gathering since morning to learn on how to make natural color to dye yarns that will be used to weave the Hobanage woven textile. This color making is using ingredients that are abundantly found in their households and surrounding environments. Materials such as roots of noni plant, turmeric, candle nuts, leaves, and tree barks can be used for making natural color. Using natural color for dyeing yarns technique in weaving process inheritance from their ancestors, but forgotten by many when making Nagekeo traditional woven textile because of easy access to chemical color substances for this time being. For the people of Nagekeo, woven textile using natural dye technique has a very high value. It's also their way to preserve heritage tradition from their ancestors.
Itu tenunan Hobanage ini biasanya ditukar dengan 1 ekor kerbau. Artinya apa? Artinya bahwa karya nenek moyang ini sangat tinggi nilainya. Dan kita ingin mengembalikan itu untuk saat ini supaya kita juga selain pelestarian alam, pelestarian budaya, juga bagaimana kita membangkitkan kembali rasa bangga kita terhadap karya-karya kita sendiri.
The learning process on making natural color to dye yarn for woven textile is also a form of cultural preservation of local wisdom that needs to be protected. Hopefully, this kind of effort can spread love of ancestors' heritage. From Nagekeo Regency in East Nusa Tenggara, Ignas Kunda is reporting to Metro Globe Network.
Kesehatan itu adalah hal penting yang harus kita jaga loh. Saat ini, teknologi pun ikut mendukung kesehatan.
Supaya semakin sehat dan bugar.
Bersama para pakar kesehatan, kami mengulas kesehatan yang berbalut teknologi.
Simak Go Healthy
di Metro
TV.
pesta sepak bola paling bergengsi di Eropa, Euro 2020 mulai berlangsung. Saksikan keseruan seluruh pertandingan UEFA Euro 2020 di mana saja dan kapan saja hanya di www.medcom.id/Euromola. Nantikan juga kuis berhadiah voucher nonton Euro di media sosial @medcom.id. Saksikan keseruan seluruh pertandingan UEFA Euro 2020.
Miliki gudang multiguna at Peak 2 Bispark. Hadir dengan layout yang fungsional. Bisa difungsikan sebagai gudang, kantor, dan rumah sekaligus. Hanya 3,5 menit menuju interchange. Hanya 18 menit menuju Bandara Internasional Soekarno-Hatta. Miliki gudang multiguna ukuran 6x20 meter. Dengan harga spesial 2,5 miliar rupiah. Kunjungi show unit kami. Hubungi 021 588 8000.
Momen terbaik Ibu Susi di Susi Cek Ombak.
Yang membuat dunia politik menarik untuk Bapak ini apa, Pak? Kopiku saya tenggelamin.
Ini waktu Bu Susi lagi random banget. Nah, kalau ini pas ngerjain menteri.
Dekat apa dengan Pak Sandi dan Pak Erick? Boleh ditonton?
Ya, nggak ada yang ngangkat di teleponnya, kacau.
Siap Ibu host, saya lupa.
Susi Cek Ombak, setiap Rabu jam 8 malam.
Beragam info menarik yang dekat dengan kearifan lokal masyarakat Indonesia, kami kemas secara apik, ringan, juga menghibur.
Kesadaran untuk mengingat Allah supaya melahirkan ridho.
Hati nurani itu akan menjadi saksi.
Pusparagam Indonesia, Sabtu dan Minggu jam 5 sore di Magna Channel.
Back to the 90s. Bersama Gigi, konser dua generasi. Saksikan Back to the 90s. Sabtu 26 Juni jam 8 malam.
Media Group News mempersembahkan televisi digital terestrial pertama dengan jangkauan nasional. Magna Channel. Temukan di saluran TV digital Anda.
Metro TV hadir di mana peristiwa terjadi. Bekerja dengan identitas yang jelas. Dan mampu beradaptasi dengan teknologi terbaru. Agar Anda bisa mendapatkan informasi dengan segera. Jurnalis Metro TV berintegritas dan tidak menerima imbalan dalam bentuk apapun. Metro TV, knowledge to elevate.
Islam adalah rahmat bagi semesta alam. Ia memberikan petunjuk bagi manusia dalam menjalani kehidupan lewat Al-Quran.
Sejatinya kitabul ilmi perlu dipahami dan dimaknai dengan benar, lalu diimplementasikan dalam keseharian.
Saya ajak Anda memetik kebaikan Al-Quran dan memahami ilmu Islam bersama alim ulama bangsa. Saksikan Hasanah Islam setiap hari Minggu pukul 2 siang waktu Indonesia Barat.
KSP Muldoko telah keluar dari akal sehat.
Kelompok yang menyerang anggota ini diidentifikasi sebagai Laskar Khusus.
Banyak informasi simpang siur di sekitar kita.
Ada pihak-pihak yang telah mengambil suatu sikap dan telah membocorkan informasi.
Mana fakta sebenarnya?
Orang itulah terorisnya, bukan Papua terorisnya.
Saya nggak mau bunuh dia, di luar dugaan, parah pas kena leher.
Saya akan konfirmasi di Kick Andy Double Check.
Olahraga menjadi salah satu penopang hidup sehat. Kejuaraan olahraga yang digelar di seluruh belahan dunia pun selalu sukses dalam daya pikat. Kompetisi yang ketat dan pertunjukan sportivitas yang hebat bisa Anda saksikan dalam Metro Sport setiap hari live jam 10 malam.
Japanese airline ANA began vaccinating its pilots and cabin attendants at Tokyo's Haneda Airport on Sunday. 50 members of staff working on international flights were inoculated with the Moderna jab. The company aims to scale up vaccinations to 300 per day. Japan has been scrambling to catch up with a slow vaccination drive ahead of the Olympic Games next month. Medical experts have warned of a risk of the Games becoming an incubator for a Tokyo variant, as 15,000 foreign athletes and tens of thousands of officials, sponsors and journalists from about 200 countries descend on and potentially mix with a largely unvaccinated population. ANA's Senior Vice President Juichi Hirasawa said the company was seeking to cooperate as much as possible with efforts to help athletes get around and curb infections at airports and on flights. The Olympics are set to open on July 23rd. Tokyo and several other prefectures are under a state of emergency until June 20th.
At least 12 people were killed and 37 seriously injured Sunday after a gas line explosion tore through a residential neighborhood in central China. The blast took place at about 3 o'clock in the morning and in the Zhangwan district of Xi'an City in the Hubei province. Authorities have rescued 138 people from the area, including 37 with serious injuries. The cause of the explosion remains under investigation. The blast struck a 2-story building built in the early 1990s, which includes pharmacies, restaurants, and other businesses. More than 900 people were evacuated from the area.
Separate bombs hit 2 minivans in a mostly Shiite neighborhood in Afghanistan's capital on Saturday, killing at least 7 people and wounding 6 others. The attacks targeted minivans on the same road about 2 kilometers apart in a neighborhood in western Kabul. Interior Ministry Deputy Spokesman Ahmad Zia said it wasn't immediately clear what type of bombs were used and no one immediately claimed responsibility for the attacks. The Islamic State group has carried out similar bombings in the area, including 4 attacks on 4 minivans earlier this month that killed at least 18 people. The first explosion killed 6 people and wounded 2, and the second explosion in front of Muhammad Ali Jinnah Hospital, where a large amount of COVID-19 patients are currently admitted, killed 1 and wounded 4. The area where the explosions happened is largely populated by the minority Hazara ethnic group, who are mostly Shiite Muslims.
On to Myanmar now, where anti-coup protesters held a hurried show of opposition to the military junta in Yangon Sunday. The flash mob scattering swiftly after a few minutes to avoid confrontation with security forces. The rally was held before the first trial of deposed National Democratic leader Aung San Suu Kyi is due to begin in Naypyidaw on a range of charges, which include illegal importation of walkie-talkies and breaking COVID-19 pandemic regulations during last year's general election campaign. During Sunday's demonstrations, about 50 young people marched down the street in Yangon's Pazun Daung township, chanting pro-democracy slogans and holding banners, one of which said, quote, "The hottest place in hell is reserved for those who stay in the middle and don't get involved in the fight between truth and lies," end quote. The mass protests that erupted across the country straight after February's coup stopped after security forces reacted with lethal force, gunning down participants and making a wave of arrests. However, the demonstrations had never stopped entirely. Groups still march daily in many rural areas, while flash mobs periodically appear in urban centers, often to the applause of bystanders.
A heated gun battle between militants and Indian police broke out Saturday in the disputed region of Kashmir, killing at least 2 police and 2 civilians. Anti-India protests later erupted during the civilians' funerals in Sapore, the northwestern town where the fighting took place after local residents alleged police had shot and killed one of the civilians after the militants fled the scene. Police Director General Dilbag Singh told reporters that militants had opened fire on a group of police who were enforcing coronavirus restrictions in the main market of Sapore, and police returned fire. Amid the shooting, 2 civilians and 2 policemen were killed, while 2 officers and a civilian were injured, Singh said.
And stay with us here for more stories coming your way. You're watching Asia Prime on Metro Globe Network.
Kesehatan yang sudah tidak optimal tentu akan berakibat pada kualitas hidup Anda. Ilmu pengetahuan yang semakin berkembang dan teknologi yang semakin maju membawa sejumlah inovasi di bidang medis.
Setelah diperiksa lab, gulanya tinggi. Curiga, hati-hati. Ini adalah salah satu tanda masalah pada jantung.
Jangan anggap enteng yang namanya stroke. Halo pemirsa, apa kabar? Senang sekali saya Tantri Murdoko dan juga Pak Ronald bisa kembali menjumpai Anda di Go Healthy, cara tepat hidup sehat.
Pesta sepak bola paling bergengsi di Eropa, Euro 2020 mulai berlangsung. Saksikan keseruan seluruh pertandingan UEFA Euro 2020 di mana saja dan kapan saja hanya di www.medcom.id/Euromola. Nantikan juga kuis berhadiah voucher nonton Euro di media sosial @medcom.id. Saksikan keseruan seluruh pertandingan UEFA Euro 2020.
Kenapa sih kita harus berinvestasi di PIK 2? Ada 3 alasan utama. Yang pertama, lokasi PIK 2. Alasan kedua, setiap orang yang membeli PIK 2 dianggap sebagai pemegang saham. Membeli produk PIK 2 memang selalu untung karena harga perdana PIK 2 50% di bawah harga market. Alasan yang ketiga, fasilitas. Di mana fasilitas yang tersedia di PIK 2 jauh lebih banyak dari real estate manapun juga.
Pandemi bikin kita susah.
Semua mencoba bertahan hidup dengan hati yang gelisah.
Kita sampai di hari ini karena kita saling melindungi.
Ada yang berjuang paling depan.
Ada yang setia melindungi.
Harapan-harapan itu sekarang nyata.
Vaksin untuk Indonesia bersama SLAM.
Setiap Jumat jam 8 malam. Salah satu cara mencegah penyebaran virus corona adalah dengan menggunakan masker.
Berikut adalah cara menggunakan masker yang baik dan benar.
Cuci tangan terlebih dahulu sebelum memakai masker. Masker tidak boleh longgar. Tutupi batang hidung hingga dagu.
Ingat, sebelum makan atau minum, lepaskan masker dan letakkan masker di tempat yang bersih.
Virus corona berbahaya. Lindungi diri, keluarga, dan sesama dengan semua pakai masker.
Banyak nelayan tidak bisa melaut karena kondisi perahunya tidak layak pakai. Nelayan membutuhkan perahu yang berkualitas agar mereka bisa kembali produktif. Melalui program Susi Cek Ombak, saya Susi Pujiastuti mengajak Anda berdonasi melalui rekening Yayasan Benih Baik Indonesia, Nelayan Berseri Laut Lestari.
Bumi Papua. Bumi Papua yang memberikan energi kepada saudara-saudaranya dari seluruh persaudaraan lain. Saya katakan ini karena inilah merupakan suatu kenyataan yang sesungguhnya. Matahari terbit dari ufuk. Dari ufuk. Dan timur itu adalah tiada artinya semuanya tanpa Papua.
Berbagi cerita seputar masalah kesehatan langsung dari sumbernya.
Kayak dihantam martil gitu, sakit gak bisa bernapas.
Kayak balita lagi kita. Dari kita dari boleh bangun tuh itu ya nggak bisa.
Kaki nggak bisa nggak sembuh-sembuh. Kata dokter ini operasi dibuntumin.
Gak punya semangat, tiap hari sedih terus. Ya takutnya nggak bisa sembuh.
Bagaimana cara agar kesehatan kita tetap terjaga? Apa saja solusinya? Saksikan Go Healthy di Metro TV.
And you are watching Asia Prime, and just in, European Union lawmakers signed into law a new digital COVID travel pass aimed at opening the 27-nation bloc up for the summer.
Speaking at the signing event, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen hopes the new certificate will solidify the spirit of an open Europe and a Europe without barriers. Starting July 1st, EU nations will have to recognize the free vaccine certificate, which can take paper or digital form and shows whether a person has either been vaccinated against the virus, has recently tested negative, or has recovered from the disease.
European Digital COVID Certificate reassures us of this spirit of an open Europe, a Europe without barriers, but also a Europe that is slowly but surely opening up after most difficult time, the pandemic. This certificate is a symbol of an open and digital Europe. We developed this certificate in record time. It will make travel in our union easier, and it will give Europeans back the freedoms they value and cherish.
And we close tonight's edition with news from the world of sports. NASCAR, Kyle Larson is good news. He was back in the NASCAR All-Star race and got another $1 million by winning again. He held off a hard-charging Brad Keselowski during the final 10-lap shootout in Texas Sunday, following a slippery 3-wide pass for the lead, and pushed Hendrick Motorsports to its second straight win and 10th overall in the annual non-points race with, check this out, 7-figure prize. That's a lot of money.
All right, then. Well, thank you for joining us on Asia Prime. We hope to see you again tomorrow. And I'm Fifi Ledea here.
I'm Ralph Tampubolan. You're watching Metro Globe Network.
All-Star race is underway. I think second place gets what's left of Clint's money.
Man, that 15 laps goes by fast.
Kyle Larson wins round 1.
You hear that, Mike? That's wide open all the way through 3 and 4.
Ryan Blaney to the green and white checkers, ending round 2 ahead of his teammate Brad Keselowski. Kyle Larson right with him, trying to set themselves up for a front row start.
Metro TV.
Kesehatan itu adalah hal penting yang harus kita jaga loh. Saat ini, teknologi pun ikut mendukung kesehatan.
Supaya semakin sehat dan bugar.
Bersama para pakar kesehatan, kami mengulas kesehatan yang berbalut teknologi.
Simak Go Healthy
di Metro
TV.
Editorial Media Indonesia. Opini surat kabar terpercaya hadir di pagi hari Anda. Membahas isu secara tajam dan